Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might restore our American Republic. Now, going through these bills we've been going through the last couple of weeks from the Florida House and Senate, well, they are a bit tedious. I understand that. Mike Levine spends many hours combing through the minutiae, trying to highlight points that should be a concern to all of us. And we get that it might not itch anyone's ears necessarily, but the information is important, if only to understand who is sponsoring what in Tallahassee and where our legislators are taking us. Any bill that takes authority away from local government smells of globalism, the attempt to take governing principles far away from those being governed, and they're preventing them from self-government. See, the aspects of our Declaration of Independence and our U.S. Constitution are the most hated by the empire builders, past and present. If your state legislators are not hearing from you, they will have to assume you don't really care enough about self-government for them to either. Now, there's enough bills on our plate right now, but if there's anything out there that you would like Mike and me to look into, just let us know in the comments. While we're waiting to hear from you, this is what we have for you today. Good morning, Mr. Levine.
Good morning, Chuck. I hope you're feeling great today, Mr. Benoit.
Yeah, I'm feeling as good as I can. A lot of things going on out there. Well, we're just making it through day by day. How about yourself?
Yep, I'm doing good. This bill analysis is keeping me up at night, but that's why we have to be ready when we come on live today.
Yeah,
So
right. Well,
I was, I had a lot of things going on yesterday in a couple of different areas of my life, and this little bill analysis, got pushed into the wee hours of the morning. Let's just say.
yeah, when I get texts from you at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, my heart goes out to you, Mike. But I hope our audience appreciates what you're doing over there. So today we're looking
I
at
enjoy it.
SB 1334, and it's pretty much mostly about our election system. And right off the bat, it defines a ballot or an official ballot as a printed sheet of paper containing contests, including offices, candidates, constitutional amendments, other public measures upon which a voter's selection will be marked by using a pen compatible with or recommended for use with the voting system for tabulation with automatic tabulation equipment or data processing equipment that is part of a voting system. The term includes a voter verifiable paper output upon which a voter's selections are marked by a voter interface device that meets voter accessibilities requirements for individuals with disabilities under Statute 301 of the Federal Help America Vote Act. That was in 2002. So is that an acceptable definition of a ballot?
It works for me, Chuck.
Oh, good.
So again, that's where this particular legislation, gets kind of wordy and, and of course it typically does. A lot of times the legislation does do that, but it has to do that in order to, kind of box everything in so that there's no loopholes or exit strategies or conflicting laws that would, create an opportunity to interpret the law differently, et cetera. So yeah, let's try to avoid that, Chuck. If you'll just start up with the topic, and then maybe give me a chance to weigh in on it a little bit, and then we'll get as specific as we have to into the text, and that way maybe our audience won't be tortured, with that lengthy, narrative, right? Can we just try that?
I'll do the best I can, Mr. Levine. The
Thank
next
you. I
point you
really
make
appreciate
is it strikes the definition of electronic or electromechanical device, and I assume it also strikes the definition of a mark sense ballot. Now that kind of confuses me. You say it eliminates all reference to mark sense in all applications and eliminates the requirement to utilize electronic or electromechanical devices or apparatuses.
Right. So, it's been a big struggle over the last several legislative sessions, particularly Representative Bernie Jocks in the Florida House has submitted uh, legislation in past sessions that just simply say that the Supervisor of Elections has the freedom to do hand counted paper ballots if he wanted to. But this strikes out the electric and electromagnetic voting machines, which means that the law, if this was to be passed, it would no longer be a requirement to have electro and electromechanical voting machines. And the marked sense, we just learned, is an optical scanner. So basically, mark sense, you can turn it around and say the sense, which is the scanner, scans the marks. So that means that without the word mark sense in this legislation, it gives, I think, the Supervisor of Elections a little more freedom as to how they conduct their elections, Chuck.
Now that sounds like a good thing to me, right? Do you agree with that?
I'm for it.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
for it. Yeah.
It also defines a voting system as a method of casting and processing votes. I don't know how much you want me to read about this, but it
Yeah, but let me
includes,
just get into that, right? So
sure, yeah,
basically,
go ahead.
all this does is it packages up the whole thing. It says it's the paper ballot. If there's a specific device that you have to use to mark the paper ballot, that's part of it. Then you've got the scanner, then you have the tabulator, and it just goes into a long list of all of the various components of what is an election system, so that when you use the word election system, it's all included. Okay. So this is just the definitions are really critically important, right? Because it really defines the subject matter that comes later, Chuck. But
There
this
you
is
go.
just and I don't want to minimize it because it is very important that every component of the election system is included in the definition, but they've done a good job on that, in my opinion. So rather than go through point by point and let's debate, what's included in the election system and what isn't, I would just say overview that I think the bill does a good job of defining the election system.
Okay, relating to voter registration, it creates language that requires voter registration applicants to acknowledge that the applicant understands that it's a third-degree felony under state and federal law to falsely swear or affirm or otherwise submit false information on voter registration application. Well, that's good
Right.
too.
So there's been some criticism over previous proposed bills that say we shouldn't be asking them to swear or affirm. They should be required to verify that
Yeah,
they
show
are
proof.
citizens. So basically, as we go through this bill, you'll find that the bill does require the applicant to verify, which is a great thing, and it still keeps the swear and affirm language also. So I'm pretty happy with this. At first glance, I said to myself, oh, this bill is not going to go as far as to force the applicant to verify citizenship. They're going to just be happy if the applicant swears and affirms that they're citizens, but that's not the case. Later in the later in the bill, it does in fact give us a list of things of identification that is satisfactory in order to verify citizenship, and we'll get more into it. So I'm happy with this as well.
Good. And then this next section is amended by the bill to effectively say that if a voter registration application submits identification that is consistent with the records on file with the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, that the DHSMV indicates the applicant has provided acceptable evidence that indicates the applicant is a U.S. Citizen, that the application must be submitted to the Supervisor of Election along with the digital signature. I guess that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, it does. And, for me, as I was reading through this, it just goes back to the complexity of the whole thing. And I'm a keep it simple guy. So for me personally, I would not have the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles registering voters. I don't think it's a good idea. But that's what we're dealing with. So what's going on here is that, and as we get deeper into the law, also you'll find that the state of Florida, they want to know not only who registers, but they also want to know who didn't register. And that's a little scary. We'll come to that later. Um, but basically what's going on is that when the somebody goes in to get a driver's license, they sign and that signature is scanned and put it on the back of your driver's license. And now they're saying that that scanned signature that was collected at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles is required to be electronically transmitted over to the Supervisor of Elections. And that's what the Supervisor of Elections is going to use when they um, look at your, for example, if you have a mail-in ballot, they're going to compare your signature on the back of that mail-in ballot to the signature at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. And, basically what's saying here is that if the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles deems that the identification that the applicant presents to them is satisfactory to verify citizenship, then the Supervisor of Elections accepts that. So, I mean, I get it. This is the complexity that we're working in. We really have three legs to this stool. We have we'll start at the bottom, the Supervisor of Elections. Then we have the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. And then we have the Secretary of State's office and the Division of Elections, which is one. So that's the three-legged stool that we're working with here. And we'll get into more detailed explanation about why that's important as we walk through the bill, Chuck.
Okay, well, it says here that the bill creates the following paraphrased summary. When someone fills out a voter registration application through the DHSMV online voter registration system, and the applicant does not produce acceptable proof of citizenship, the online voter registration system must notify the Supervisor of Election the applicant's U.S. citizenship could not be verified, and the applicant must be transmitted to the SOE. The application, I mean. So, and then it says the digital signature must be transmitted to the SOE, and digital signature satisfies the statute defining the characteristics of an acceptable signature for ballot verification purposes. I guess that last piece confuses me.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, you want to say to yourself, if somebody doesn't qualify, why do you need to send that information over to the Supervisor of Elections? But that's what this is saying. Or actually, not to the Supervisor of Elections, to the Department of State, right? And that's what this is saying. So that's a little concerning. But as we get through the bill, we're going to find out that the state of Florida is well, I don't want to say as, but maybe almost as interested in who's not registering to vote and who's not, when you go to the DMV, who is not updating their voter record at the DMV, because that all has to be reported under this bill. So there is some deep state monitoring going on here, Chuck.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's the following paraphrased summary too that says if a person presents themselves to the DHSMV and cannot be verified in the DHSMV system, whether the person has ever had a driver's license or state identification card or not, the DHSMV must load that person's data into the DHSMV database, populate the data fields, and instruct the person to complete the person's voter registration application and deliver the application to the SOE for disposition. Again, it's kind of forcing us to get them into a database, even though they can't prove that they're a citizen, and then telling the person to complete that at the SOE's office. Is that what that's saying?
It's really what it says is that when they gather all the information they need to issue a driver's license or a state issued ID card, they're going to gather all that and put it into a system, which is effectively a database. And then they're going to use the information they gathered to populate the voter registration application. And they're going to ask the person who came in, they didn't come in to register to vote. They came in to get their driver's license sorted out. and they're going to say you can either electronically submit this, or we want you to print this out and sign it and take it to the Supervisor of Elections office. So they're really strongly encouraging people to register to vote, Chuck. That's what's going on. And they're using the bully pulpit of the state to, um, you know, I don't want to use the word intimidate, but, to
Make it
kind of,
difficult on them if they don't.
yeah, it makes it difficult if they don't. Correct. Thank you.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Okay, the bill stipulates that the registration date for a valid application to update the voter's records with a change of address or name of party affiliation is retroactive to the date the application was initially received, once the required sufficient evidence is verified. So it may take weeks for the evidence to be verified, but the date for the application is retroactive all the way back to maybe weeks. So that
To
kind
the
of gives
date
me
when the information was submitted, not to when it's approved.
right.
And of
So
course, that goes into the closing of the books for voting and all that
yeah,
kind of thing, right? I mean, if
right.
you provide all of your information to the Department of Motor Vehicles or the Supervisor of Elections, and the information sits around for a couple of weeks, and then they close the books, that means you may not get to vote in the upcoming election. So this basically just makes it retroactive and makes the application date. And that makes it actually a little ambiguous, Chuck, right? Because I mean, I guess they're time stamping everything, which we know that's true, at the Supervisor of Elections office. So maybe that's not a problem, but it certainly implies some degree of a lack of efficiency. But I guess I'm okay. I mean, honestly, you wouldn't want to tell somebody that you came in before the closing of the books and you submitted your application, you submitted all the required paperwork, and you qualify, but because we didn't get around to verifying your application till after the closing of the books, sorry, you don't get to vote. I wouldn't be too happy if that happened to me, and I wouldn't want it to happen to anyone else.
So if the DHSMV records indicate that an application does not have sufficient evidence on file to verify citizenship, or if the DHSMV records show that the applicant is not a U.S. citizen at all, the applicant must be notified, and the applicant must provide the required documentation supporting qualifications to vote in Florida in order for the SOE to place the application on the registration rolls as an active voter. Well, that makes sense, but what's the deal there? I mean,
I got lost in that description.
yeah,
Uh,
well, it's just basically saying that the guy's got to verify that he's a citizen, but to get on
right,
the,
but here's a big deal too. And when he can't, and when there's not enough information available to verify you're a citizen, it goes over to the Supervisor of Elections office anyway, right? Or the Department of State. It's a little confusing actually, right? Because in most cases, the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles is corresponding with the state, not the local SOE. But at the end of the day, if somebody submits an application and can't prove citizenship, this legislation requires the Supervisor of Elections to reach out to them and tell them that their application, which is good, I would say, although which is great. I mean, I think these SOEs need to completely do their job and fulfill their responsibilities to every voter and every applicant. But they've got to reach out to the applicant who is being effectively denied because they don't have proof of citizenship, and give the applicant an opportunity to provide that verification of citizenship after their experience with the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, Chuck.
yes, I think possibly this next section, under the proposed changes to the law, the DHSMV shall enter into an agreement with the Department of State, which is I think what you'll be talking about, to cross-reference
Right.
driver's license information, last four digits of social security number and citizen status. So that obviously seems to be a change.
Well, again, I think basically what's going on, as we go through the bill a little further, you'll see that and keep in mind, this what we're covering today is not law. This is a filed bill that's going through committee and has the possibility of becoming a law. I think while we're here, Chuck, we might also inform our audience that Senator Grall submitted SB 1334, and when it got to committee, the committee just wiped everything that Senator Grall submitted and then redrafted what we're looking at now. So what Senator Grall originally submitted is different, very different. Well, I wouldn't, I read both sides, the original and this, and there are differences. And keep in mind that Defend Florida has a very good team, a small team, but a very effective team of activists who are lobbying Senator Grall and the committees and things like that. And that team has been able to persuade our legislators to take some things that are not favorable to America First activists out of this bill. So you're seeing this bill has been stripped of a lot of bad stuff. And we have to thank Defend Florida and their team for doing the hard work of lobbying and getting a lot of bad stuff out of this bill. So I just wanted people to know that this is a committee substitute bill. This is not the original bill filed by the senator. This is a committee substitute bill, Chuck.
Okay, the next section, the proposed law also requires the Department of State to include in the statewide voter registration system the type of document or proof that the licensee or cardholder provided as evidence of United States citizenship. I would say that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Absolutely. So every one of those applications should have the method by which the applicant verified citizenship, and hopefully that document is scanned in the system. So we have a hard copy, not a hard copy. We have a electronic copy of the document itself to verify that the people processing this information at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles is legit, right, Chuck?
There you go. This next subsection of the proposed law requires the DHSMV to cooperate with the Department of State by reconciling driver's license information, state identification cards, including changes to license information and card information with the statewide voter registration system. So
right. So they're reconciling, Chuck. So basically, think about that. The Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles has a big database, right? Obviously, it's a big database. And the Secretary of State's office and Division of Elections has a big database too. So if I were running that, I would want to make sure that those data headings, merge fields, I would call them, but they're data headings, are as synchronized and matched as possible. So all of this verification is done electronically, Chuck, if that makes sense. So now you're comparing your database with their database, flagging differences. And of course, the real-time changes are happening at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, not at the Secretary of State or the Division of Elections. So that's just where those two organizations cooperate to get the Secretary of State as much information as they can have to verify that all of the registrants, all the voter registrants at the Division of Elections have provided evidence of citizenship, which I'm in favor of that. It is, again, you're giving the government a lot of information about you, but the question becomes, is it more important that we have a lot of checks on the election system, or is your privacy more important than free and fair elections? And that's a decision that, each of us has a different tolerance for both of those things. I have, a lot, obviously since 2020, we've been screaming at the top of our lungs about the importance of one man, one vote. And at the same time, we also talk about the government gathering information on us. So we have both of those things in play in this bill, Chuck.
Right. So it says this currently is currently managed by the DHSMV, informing in each SOE of the change in driver's license and ID card information pertinent to the voter roll management. But under the proposed agreement, this information will be reconciled at the Division of Elections instead of the local SOE. Is that pretty much what we've been talking about?
That is what we've been talking about.
Right. So the new proposed language requires the SOE, in the event of a new applicant is discovered to be someone who was previously determined to be ineligible to vote, must verify the current eligibility of the applicant within 13 days after receipt of such record by reviewing the information provided by a government entity listed in statutes 97.075 or 97.093 to determine if the applicant remains ineligible. So in other words,
yeah. So basically, somebody comes, they apply to vote. The database has the history of that particular person, and that person was declared ineligible at a different application time. So now that application is going to get flagged, and it's going to go eventually over to the Supervisor of Elections office, who's going to be required to reach out to that applicant and then determine whether the applicant can verify eligibility, okay, which is more than just citizenship, keeping in mind. There's a lot of things that would prevent someone from being ineligible to vote. So that's where the kind of the onus falls on the SOE to, number one, notify the person that they were, that, you know, the reason we're calling you today is because you applied to vote in a previous election cycle or something, and you were determined to be ineligible. So now what we're going to do is we're going to verify your eligibility, and either they'll verify eligibility and then record the voter into the voter registration database as an active voter, or they will notify the applicant.
Are you still with me, Mike?
Here. Frozen. What is that? Chuck?
Yeah, you're frozen on me, Mike. Oh,
there you go. We're back now. We were just
I think you're
buffering.
back.
We were just buffering. That's all. Yeah, we're back.
sorry
Now we
about
have
that.
video and audio. We're good. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, this next section is about eligibility. We're probably going to run a little over here, but we've got these last final little segments. The department shall identify those registered voters who are potentially ineligible based on their legal status regarding United States citizenship by comparing or receiving information from the DHSMV, Clerk of State and Federal Courts, and the United States Department of Homeland Security. And then upon receipt of the information referenced above, the department must make a determination as to the credibility of the information received. If the department determines the information credible, the department must notify the SOE and provide copies of the support documents indicating the potential ineligibility of the voter to be registered. And then upon receipt of that notice of ineligibility, the SOE must adhere to the procedures set forth in subsection 7 before removal of a registered voter's name from the statewide voter registration system. So that basically it keeps the SOE from striking the name until he gets further, even though it gets further information. That just seems to me to be a real burden.
And then, you know, Chuck, this just goes into the complexity of government, right? All of these organizations, you know, big, giant organizations with lots and lots of employees and lots of computers and systems, and they're going back and forth among each other. And then you wonder why, you know, things get convoluted, right? I mean, and, you know, I mean, one guy's voter registration is probably not that important to one of 1,000 employees or 10,000 employees sitting in some bureaucracy office cubicle, right, who's responsible for sharing information back and forth, you know, about all kinds of immigration status documents and things like that. So it's pretty interesting. And just so you know, the word credibility is there, but in the law and the legislation itself, it also uses the word reliability. So they want the information provided by other government agencies to be credible and reliable in order to verify. And then, of course, if the applicant can't be verified, or if the voter who is currently on the voter roll can't be verified from reliable documents, then they are to be removed. But as you're pointing out, it's quite a process. We give them a lot of rope before we remove voters from the voter roll. And you can understand why. If somebody walks into a voting polling station and they're denied the right to vote, and they have had no notification previously or whatever, they're unprepared to be denied the right to vote, then you're probably pretty upset. If I walked into a voter registration polling station and I was denied the right to vote, or if I mailed my ballot in and it was, not counted for one reason or another, I wouldn't be happy about it. They'd have to explain to me in detail why I lost my right to vote, Chuck.
Requires the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle to provide certain information weekly to the to that department, and information identifying those persons who during the preceding week presented documents acceptable as evidence of the United States citizenship upon being issued a new, renewed, or replaced Florida driver's license or Florida identification card. So they're basically updating information weekly. That's a good thing, right?
I think so. That means it's in front of you all the time. That means that it's part of the standard operating procedures for your employees at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. You're constantly looking at this with every customer that comes to your counter and they want to do something with their driver's license or their voter registration. It means your employees are doing this all the time, which, the more repetition we get, the more, I would suggest, the better the system works, so this is a really great thing that as people, and there's a list, right? When, people move, they move, keep in mind that when you register to vote, it's not just whether you can vote. It's not just a state issue or a federal issue. It's also in your county and in your county commission districts, your city council districts, your state rep districts, state senate districts. So we want to make sure that when somebody changes their address on the driver's license, the appropriate supervisors of elections are notified and all the records are updated. And I do have a concern about this, but we'll get to it in a minute, Chuck.
Okay, well, any of the following documents acceptable as evidence of state citizenship? So there's a list of, looks like 8 different items here. Are there any in particular you want
to go through it, do you?
I'm sorry?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you don't have to
It's a
go
good
through all
list.
them.
Okay, there's no junk in it, right? It's no longer, you can no longer qualify with your homeowners association card or anything like that. It's a good list.
Yeah. Under the proposed law, the DHSMV must provide the department information identifying a change in residence address on the Florida driver's license. That's important, and obviously that should happen. The information must contain the person's name, date of birth, sex, last 4 digits of their social security, if available, in order to identify a voter's registration record. That's pretty standard.
So you can see they're connecting the dots here, Chuck. They're really connecting the dots between driver's licenses, state issued IDs, and voter registration. So I'm sure there's a lot of things in this bill that a lot of people won't like. But there's also things, if you really want to clamp down on it and get only citizens voting, then I think this bill goes a pretty long ways to doing that.
So under this proposed law, the DHSMV must provide to the department information identifying new, renewed, or replaced Florida driver's licenses or Florida identification card numbers issued to persons who declined pursuant to 97.057 to register or update their voter record. So again, it's pushing people to take care of all that right at the DMV.
No, but that's even stronger, Chuck, because now you're receiving reports. I walk into the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles to renew my driver's license, and they offer me an opportunity to update my voter registration records. And I'd say, no, thank you. I'm going to be put on a list with my driver's license number. So I am very identifiable. So that's a concern, right? If I choose not to update my voter registration record when I go, which could be just party affiliation, whatever it is, right? And I choose not to update. Like, for example, I might just rather deal with my SOE directly instead of dealing with the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. There's a lot of ways, or there's not a lot of ways actually, but there's a few ways to update your voter registration. If I don't want to do that at the Department of Motor Vehicles, then I get reported. So I'm concerned about that.
Within 7 days, the Department of State shall report such information to the appropriate SOE who must update the voter registration records.
Right. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. The Secretary of State has positioned himself at the top of the food chain between the Department of Motor Vehicles and the SOEs. And the Department of Motor Vehicles reports to the Secretary of State, which then feeds the data to the SOE. And you can just imagine with 67 counties, 67 SOEs, how many, it's obviously there's the tax collector runs the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. So there's 67 tax collectors in Florida, and the tax collectors are going back and forth with each individual SOE. But now they have a singular point of contact, which would be the Secretary of State's office and the Division of Elections. So you might think that because it's a state agency, that the tax collectors might perceive themselves as being subordinate because that's the way our government has evolved. We think that the guy at the federal government is more authority than the guy at the state government, and the guy at the state government has more authority than the guy at the local government. That's what you and I are fighting every single day. But that's exactly what this legislation does. It kind of gives a little muscle to make sure that the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles is communicating the data that they need to communicate. And they have one authoritative figure who will force the communication, which would be the Department of State, right, which could land the Department of Motor Vehicles in court if they don't comply with the legislation, either what's proposed here, should it pass, or whatever's on the books now, Chuck.
So under the heading of federal courts, under this, just a quick editor's note. We are kind of over our 30-minute typical program, but we have three small sections left, and we'd like to go ahead and get through it, so please bear with us. Under this next section, federal courts, under this proposed law, the federal courts must provide to the Department of State information from a jury coordinator that a person was disqualified or potentially disqualified as a prospective juror from jury service due to not having United States citizenship, being convicted of a felony, being deceased, or being a non-resident of this state, or being a non-resident of the county. So the department shall use such information to identify registered voters or applicants for voter registration who may be potentially ineligible based on information provided in accordance with statute 98.075. Now, they're expecting these people to take care of people who are not alive anymore.
It's administrative, Chuck.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that your juries are drawn from the jury pools drawn from registered voters. So if the federal courts reach out to a registered voter and they receive credible and reliable information that says that the voter is deceased, well, then that's a good way to get people off the voter registrations. And of course, there's other ways to do that too. But this is another opportunity to cross-check between governmental agencies to keep all those voter rolls clean. And that's what we've been fighting for years, Chuck, is to keep the voter rolls clean. Now, hopefully the SOE step up to the plate and do what they need to do, and the Department of State and Division of Elections as well. So this is keep in mind that managing these databases is a job. It doesn't take care of itself, Chuck.
So this next section, restrictions on individuals qualifying for public office. Now this is making it more difficult for someone to run for office. A person may not qualify for nomination as a candidate of a political party if he or she has not been a registered member of that party for the 365-day period preceding the beginning of qualification. or as a candidate with no party affiliation, if he or she has not been registered without a party affiliation or has been a registered member of any political party for the 365-day period preceding the beginning of the qualifying period. So it's, I don't know if I'm happy with this. I mean, in one sense it makes sense, but in another sense, it's like if someone, for instance, is a registered Republican and they're not happy with uh, who is running for their particular office, they can basically uh, go to an NPA or something like that and try to run in a different party. But this is going to prevent them from doing that for a full 365 days. What are your thoughts on
And
that?
it's also interesting. Yeah, I share your concern as well. Um, but it's also interesting that legislation was filed by a Democrat, Allison Tant from Madison County in the House, and a Democrat in the Senate, Kristen Arrington, that covered this information. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a classic example of how bills get blended into each other. So now, we have a Republican Senator Grall submitting this legislation, and then you have a Democrat Senator, Kristen Arrington, providing this exact requirements, maybe not the exact same language, but I bet it is, into, because I did read that bill and I think I shared it with you, Chuck. But this is where the senators and state reps will merge provisions in certain legislation combined into one piece of legislation so they get it all done. Okay. So this basically just says that in order for you to run as a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian or whatever, you have to be a member of that party for the previous 365 days prior to the beginning of qualifying. That's what it says. And if you have an interruption in your party affiliation, then you can't run in that particular election cycle. And then it goes as far to say, if you want to run as a no party affiliation, you have to be no party affiliation for 365 consecutive days prior to the beginning of qualifying. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound horribly unreasonable, but you can see that the parties are tired of people just flipping their voter registration or getting frustrated with one party or the other and then jumping out as a no party affiliation candidate. And so this is the parties weighing in on this. And just keep in mind that the legislators control the parties. So if the legislators don't like it, they're going to lean on the political parties, and the political parties will support legislation without ever talking to their members to protect incumbents, Chuck.
Okay, and we have a final section here. By July 1st, 2027, a Florida driver's license or state identification card issued to a qualified applicant who is a United States citizen as last recorded in the system must include his or her legal citizenship status at the time of the new issuance, renewal, or replacement. It also adds that notwithstanding any other law, the department must, at no charge, issue a renewal or replacement driver's license or identification card if a licensee or card holder timely updates his or her legal status upon becoming a citizen of the United States. And I guess that's the end of the bill here. What's our final
That's
comments?
the end of it. There you go. So, at the end of the day, long story short, that as we go through and renew our driver's licenses, then we're going to verify citizenship. And when we do, there's going to be a insignia, typically a star, gold star, on your driver's license indicating that you're a citizen. So, there's a lot of benefits to that, in my opinion, Chuck.
There we go. Well, would you like to make any final comment before we close down?
This is a, I mean, so ladies, audience, put yourself in a legislator's position and you go into a committee meeting and this particular legislation is on your agenda and you're going to have to vote yes or no to advance this legislation. Um, I would imagine that most of our audience has things they like about this bill and things they don't. Unfortunately, you don't get to handcraft legislation all by yourself. So the question is, I'd like for everyone to just consider if this was in front of you in committee, or if you were on doing a floor vote on this bill, would you vote for it? Yes or no? I think I'm a yes vote on this legislation, even though there are things in it that I don't like. But I'm very concerned about having strict controls over our voter rolls to make sure that non-citizens don't vote. So for me, that's my A1 North Star. And although I do see that the government's getting a little heavy-handed, they're doing a lot of data collection, all that kind of thing. We can deal with that. Maybe sadly, kick the can down the road idea. But I think that sealing and perfecting our voter processes is I would say, first priority in the country, but also in the state of Florida, which is what we're dealing with now. So you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, these legislators, they're not living in a perfect world either. And they get things in front of them that have good things and bad things, in which I hate that analogy, but it's true. And you got to make a decision, whether whether the benefits of this legislation outweigh the shortcomings. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chuck. I just want to thank you for getting us through this kind of detailed minutia in this bill, Chuck.
Yes, well, I thank you as well for all of your hard work, and thank you all again for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Like and share the program, please, please, please. And remember, if you are unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you, God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.